Welcome to the Anti-Architect Podcast. I am your host, Christian Giordano. As president and owner of the design firm Mancini Duffy, I am driven by a quest for learning and radically changing the industry. With this podcast, I'm hoping to improve the industry that I'm so passionate about by taking a critical look at how architects work through a variety of voices and shared experiences. Hello, Anti-Architect Podcast listeners. I'm excited to have Catherine Leidersdorff. Did I say that right?
Leidersdorff,
All right.
But close.
I'm excited to have Catherine Leidersdorff, CEO of Architectural Flooring Resource, AFR as it's known, as my guest today in the studio on the Anti-Architect Podcast. Cathy founded AFR in 1993 as a certified minority business enterprise, MBE, and women's business enterprise, WBE. AFR is a full-service national commercial flooring contractor specializing in furnishing, installing, and maintaining a wide variety of flooring products, and from my point of view, pretty much every flooring product known to mankind. Since 2002, they adopted a policy of recycling all carpets as well as other materials, and today they remain the leaders in this sector. Cathy has been a trusted partner to many in the New York tri-state design community for almost 30 years. She and her team at AFR have earned their reputation as a trustworthy resource for designers, developers, and end users for all things flooring. But for as much knowledge and help she provides, Cathy and her team are probably the most fun to know in our industry.
Thank you.
Her events, parties, and you will hear whiskey, gin, honey, and other things all make for a great time. I love seeing Cathy. She's always smiling and brings fun when we see her. You can't help but be happy around her and her team. Cathy, thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast. It's a pleasure
Thank you
having
for
you.
having me.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
Very nice to hear all those lovely things about me.
So normally I ask a question about architects and designers right now, but I'm going to ask a different one. So can you explain the difference between whiskey, rye, and bourbon?
Sure. Whiskey, rye whiskey is made with at least 51% rye grain.
Okay.
Bourbon is made with at least 51% corn.
Okay. Got
And
it.
it's very simple.
All
It's
right.
the mash. It's the grain that you put in that defines, and then how long you keep it in barrels.
Now, do you have to, now isn't bourbon, doesn't that have to be, done in Kentucky? Isn't
No.
that the whole thing?
No,
No?
we can make bourbon in New York State.
Okay.
There is some sort of a regional thing, but we're making bourbon, so it must be legal, right?
Okay, cool.
And as long as we make it 51%, you can't say Kentucky bourbon or you can't say Tennessee.
Got it.
You have to say New York State bourbon.
Got it. Okay. All right. That makes sense. So we'll come back to all the bourbon and
Okay.
whiskey and stuff in a bit. So once we kind of hear your whole story, but let's talk a little bit about architects and designers. So if you had to pick one thing, what annoys you about architects and designers?
Oh, go on. That's a tough one right off the bat. I think in terms of the whole process, I think the most annoying thing or difficult thing to deal with is most architects, architectural firms, they have younger people picking products. And instead of coming to us and asking us, hey, Kath, we have a raised deck. What vinyl would you suggest we use on this? Or what would you suggest we do to install a wood on this raised deck, for example? Mm-hmm. They just specify things, and then there's a gazillion issues because the vinyl that they selected isn't good for raised deck, for example. So they're picking things without consulting us, and then that causes all these issues down the road, which your team has to deal with and the GC has to deal with. And there are 35,000 emails. And then the owner calls me and says, hey, Kath, what's the problem here? And I'm like, well, if somebody would have just asked me what to use on this specific situation, we could have wrapped our head around it and given you 30 choices.
Yeah.
And so the process is streamlined. I think most architects and designers will hire a lighting consultant to come in and help them. But flooring, I think they think is easy.
Right.
When in fact, it's very complicated and there are nuances and repercussions to selecting the wrong product. And unfortunately, the manufacturer's rep is going to say, sure, you could use that on raised deck, but they don't tell you, you have to use it on, you can use it on raised deck, but you have to put a plywood subfloor on your raised deck.
Right.
So
works for them, they get the sale. So
correct. They're too quick to say, yes,
right,
you can use a woven vinyl in a pantry. Right. And when in fact, I wouldn't necessarily tell you that.
Yep.
So we find ourselves fixing problems as opposed to preventing them.
Got it. Okay.
So that's the biggest
Are you
issue.
surprised by, how much you actually have to educate designers and architects, even ones that are more experienced about flooring and what goes into it?
I love educating people.
Okay.
An educated consumer is my best customer,
Okay.
right? You remember that commercial?
Uh-huh.
Because they understand and they take my guidance and they take it seriously. I'm trying to make what we do is architectural flooring resource, right? We guide people and help them specify performance-based products.
Right.
Not just, hey, this is a pretty brown. This will go. So that we're very specific what we like to do. So I love when people ask me technical questions and we can help them.
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And when you think about kind of how it works here, and you guys obviously are a resource, for many firms, but I know for our firm specifically, we do try to consult you ahead of time and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, rather than just, hey, this looks really nice. We want to use this kind of no matter what, and we're going to shove it in there and make it work kind of thing. Because that is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, the older designers are actually, I don't know if it's a generational thing or maybe because they know us, they're more likely to pick up the phone and say, hey, Kath, I'm looking for a walnut-looking wood that will do well in high traffic.
Right.
Versus the younger designer will just spend 6 hours online looking for a product when in 20 minutes we could have explained why you can't use walnut in a high traffic area. And these are 5 options that you can. So I think the younger generation are used to using the internet more than
absolutely
making a phone call.
Absolutely. I've talked about this a lot, and I've talked about this even with other guests on the podcast, that the younger generation doesn't want to pick up the phone and make that quick call, right? They'd rather do all of that research because the internet kind of has all that information somewhere in there. The problem is that you don't know what you're finding, right? And if you call an expert, you can get that answer within minutes, right?
It's not efficient.
Right.
As efficient as the internet can be, you know that you've been home looking for something. You want to change the air conditioning system in your house. You could just go into a hole and spend 3 hours.
Exactly.
And it's wasteful.
Exactly.
As opposed to calling up someone in HVAC and saying, what do you think of this?
My wife's going to kill me for saying this, but even shoes, like she orders shoes for the kids, because it's free returns. But all these shoes come and come and come, and then none of them fit. And I go, why don't you just go to a shoe store? I don't understand.
Call me crazy.
She does say that the shoe stores don't have any inventory, so that's why she does it. But how can we get architects and designers and contractors to better communicate with each other looking at it from your sort of contractor side, rather than this kind of silly adversarial relationship that we kind of have?
Yeah, I at this point in my career, I don't want adversarial relationships. I know it's a luxury. It's not that I don't have to deal with adversarial people, but I prefer to work with people who if I call you up and I say, hey, Kristen, this is a bad spec. You're going to listen to me, and you're going to know that I'm not saying this because I want to sell you something else, right, or I want to make more money, or you're going to say, if Cathy said this, you should pay attention to it.
Yep.
And I think what happens is there's skepticism when there are no relationships, right? So if someone is trying to switch a spec, quite often it's because they're trying to make more money. Like in our industry, we don't have a good reputation in general. So I think communicating and being and just being honest with people and experience. People who are honest and tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And while we can't always work with them, you can always consult with them, right?
Exactly.
And you can make sure that you're getting the right information. That happens to me all the time. I get called all the time. And listen, you didn't get the job, Kath, but can you come look at this? Something's desperately wrong.
Right.
And then I say, well, you saved money. You should have bought aspirin.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly.
Because there's a reason they were less.
Yep.
And they don't follow the directions. We're nerds. We follow the rules, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
our audience would love to get to know you a little bit better. Where'd you grow up? What did your parents do? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in East Elmhurst, Queens. Okay. It was Jackson Heights, and somehow they
got renamed.
They got renamed. They moved the zip codes, whatever. But my parents are both immigrants from Argentina. Spanish was my first language because I was born 7 years after they got here. So obviously, if you moved to Croatia tomorrow, in 7 years, you'd still be speaking English in your house, right?
Absolutely.
So I was born, Spanish was my first language. Grew up in East Elmhurst in a one of those tutors that are attached homes that are sunken living room, fireplace. I thought we were rich. I really did.
Good.
Good. Exactly. And both of my parents, we weren't rich. My father worked for the city. He was an auditor for the city, and my mother was an export clerk, and she handled South America for a dye company. They sold colorants.
Okay.
And so I went to public school. English as a second language wasn't popular then. Just to give you an idea, my sister was left back 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Because she didn't speak English.
Oh, wow.
There was no English as a second language.
No way of teaching. Yeah.
So my parents forced us to speak English.
Okay.
They still speak Spanish in the house, by the way, but we had to respond in English.
Okay.
And I went to public school. I went to the only agricultural high school there is in the New York City region.
Okay.
In John Bowne High School in Flushing, Queens.
So what is an agricultural high school?
An ag high school is basically, I would have 2 extra courses a day. So I had 2 extra periods a day.
Okay.
It's a 90-minute longer day than all the other students. And we took 2 classes a day of agriculture. So it was anything from small engine repair to dairy cattle management, or horticulture. Really?
And this was in Queens?
This was in Queens. It's still there. And there was a land lab, which was a farm. So you had to grow between freshman and sophomore year. You had a 10 by 10 plot and had to grow vegetables, and
Okay.
and you had to take care of chickens that were on the land lab. This is right. It's between Queens College and Main Street. There's the high school is right there.
Okay.
And so I loved agriculture from the get-go. I don't know
Okay.
why. And I worked on a dairy farm for 2 summers because that was a requirement for the high school. And I actually went to Cornell from there as a pre-vet because I thought I wanted to be a vet, but so does 99% of
Okay.
every other, every
Yeah.
other kid wants to be.
Yeah. My one of my daughters wants to be a vet right now. But
Yeah. But I that passion changed when I was in school. And
Okay. So now, so you want to be a vet growing up. So I always joke with like my furniture friends, right? That they always say, because they love to kind of pull other furniture people. No one in furniture, when they were growing up thought to themselves, yeah, I really want to sell corporate office furniture, right? Yet it's a great career. It's a very lucrative career. You can, you meet a lot of wonderful people in our industry. So, what kind of how did you get into flooring?
So I went to Cornell and I studied business, and I graduated. Well, they had companies come to campus and interview us. You had to there was a whole lottery system you had to bid on who you would be interviewed. It was a whole process. And I was interviewed by Armstrong World Industries.
Oh, interesting.
In their flooring division. And I was hired as a marketing rep out of college.
Okay.
I had 4 days off, and I went right to a 4-month training course in Lancaster, PA.
Okay.
I lived there for 4 months, and they trained you. We basically worked and just learned flooring.
Okay.
And then I came to New York as a marketing rep, worked for them for a few years. And then I went to go work for our dealer, one of our dealer partners.
Okay.
So that's how I got into the flooring business.
Okay.
And then after that, I started my own business. I was 28 years old when I incorporated.
Yeah. So that's incredible. So when you think about it, that was, I think I looked up the years. It was 20.
It was a long time ago. 28.
Here it is, 28 years and 6 months ago. you started your company.
Yeah.
AFR. So, did you always want to have your own company? How did that come about? It's very entrepreneurial, and to know that at that time.
Yeah, I was, it's funny, when I was in college, there was posters, run your own business for the summer. You can make a ton of money, blah, blah, blah. And I was definitely motivated by doing that.
Okay.
And it was something called College Pro Painters. So they taught you how to estimate painting jobs. So I went from Ithaca to Rochester, like 3 weekends in a row, have intensive courses on learning how to estimate painting. And then they do a blitz of mailers. And I was going around. I was knocking on people's door even and saying, it looks like you need a paint job. I'm with College Pro Painters. Want an estimate? And I did that. And I, before the summer started, I probably had 3 or 4 houses signed up. I remember that because I got a sweatshirt, because they were giving sweatshirts if you signed up.
So you were selling the painting jobs.
I was selling painting jobs, and
Okay.
I got ladders, and I went to a boatyard, and I got old tarps, and my father gave me I had a little Pinto at the time, and he said, you could take the station wagon for the summer. So I ran it out of my father's station wagon in my apartment, and I ran a painting business. And they taught us, right? And I followed the rules, always followed the rules. And about 2 weeks into it, it was, I think, my first nervous breakdown in my life. Like, I was just like, oh my God, what have I done? This is so big. This is so big. And I had no choice. There was no out. I had signed people on. Like, I had to get the crews there. I had to get the ladders there. I had to get the paint there. I was like overwhelmed. But by 6 weeks in, I was like, I got this.
Nice.
I got this. It's hard.
Yeah.
But I got this.
Yeah.
It works. And so I made $10,000 that summer.
Oh, wow.
Which was a tremendous
Sure.
amount of money back then. I was able to buy a waterbed and a stereo. That's what my priorities were.
That's funny.
Right. And so I did that. So I was always entrepreneurial.
Okay.
I just always. And then I went to go work for Armstrong, went to work for a dealer, and I want things done well. I don't want to compromise. The dealer I worked for, the gentleman who taught me the business he was very insightful, and he was a great businessman. And his son who took over the business, not so much.
Okay.
So I couldn't stay there.
Okay.
So I was like, I could always go work. I knew I could always get a job.
Right.
Because I could sell. So I said, why not?
Start your own gig.
I ate a lot of pizza.
So, but you're, even the name of your company, right? That the idea at 28 years old, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a sophisticated idea that you were going to be a resource for the industry. What kind of made you go down that road, that you weren't going to be just some, place that sells carpet or sells flooring or sells whatever, right? You were going to actually be the go-to place for a knowledge center,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what
Correct.
made you think that through?
Well, again, the industry was very different.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Bentley Mills right now has 5 reps in New York. Interface has 6 or 7, right? If you go down the line, the companies, the flooring companies have multiple reps. Back then, they maybe had 1 rep.
Okay.
They had 1 rep, and there wasn't enough professional wrap your head around the situation advice. Let's face it, a mill rep has a quota.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on I want to say it wasn't JetBlue. It was at LaGuardia. And I went to see an architect, and he says, oh, I'm using this at the terminal. What do you think? And I said, well, it's a beautiful carpet, but I turned around and there's only 12 stitches per inch. You need something that's at least 18. And there's too much face weight here because it's going to crush.
Mm-hmm.
So the mill reps are just taught sell, sell, sell.
Right.
Whereas I was wrapping my head around the situation, and the mill rep at the time could have said the same thing.
Sure.
I wasn't trying to change the manufacturer. I was trying to change this and beef up the spec
Right.
for performance.
Right.
So, I saw that there was a gap, that people weren't getting enough valuable information to make performance-based specs.
Right. Right. Not specific product.
Not pretty.
Right.
I can give you the blue you want. I can give you the gray you want.
Right.
But if it's not going to perform, I can't stand behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a gap. And now there's more information.
Yeah, I could see that. And the products have changed over time, right?
And they've gotten better.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the even on the wood or the carpet side, a lot of them, the manufacturers make very similar products.
Correct.
So you can do a true performance spec and not, vary too much ultimately in the end.
Yeah, I think in the carpet tile segment, most of the manufacturers that we have the luxury of working with, which are the top tier,
Mm-hmm.
they all make very, very high performance product.
Right.
It's more in the vinyl area and the wood area that I think there's a huge variation in the quality that's available. And unfortunately, most architects or designers don't have that information.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. So what were some of the early challenges when you started your business?
Oh my God. I mean, there was just so many. Being a woman, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Being taken seriously as I'm 28 years old, 29. Let's say I'm 29 when I actually start the business. I look at 29-year-olds today and I'm like, I would never hand her a check. Right? I would never hand this person a $72,000 check. I remember when I first got a $72,000 deposit, I was like, they were actually giving me this huge, check.
Right.
So, I had many clients when I started my own business, but convincing GCs that I knew what I was doing and people in the industry, because let's face it, there's no other woman flooring contractor. It's all men.
Right.
And at the time when I started, they were also mostly third generation companies that owned New York.
Yeah. In
terms of the flooring. So that was a challenging aspect, but
you're a disruptor before it was a thing.
But doing it, yep. Right? Just finding the right people. I was very fortunate. I was able to hire 2 people that worked with me beforehand.
Okay.
But finding the right people and getting installers to listen. Don't, because they were like mansplaining. Yeah, I'm doing it this way because, no. That's not the right way. And then they catch you knowing what you're talking about. It's like the face, they actually make a face like, oh my God, I just got busted. So, but those challenges, like, I don't see those anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I would go to job site meetings and I would be the only woman. And they would say, let's get this little lady, although flooring is supposed to go last at the job site meeting, let's get this little lady out of here so we can all focus. I mean, honestly, could you imagine like today?
No.
Someone saying that today? But I was thrilled because I was like out of there.
Yeah, get out of there, yeah.
Right? But and then I remember doing work for the UN and finally seeing a woman furniture rep.
Okay.
At the meeting, and now it's.
Yeah, I mean, now I would say, at least 50%, if not more, the project managers are women.
Right.
It's just, I'm sure it's still a thing. And I know I've talked to some people even on this podcast where it is a thing, but it's much, much less to where it was. I mean, it's gone completely differently at this point.
Yeah. And after being in the business for so long, now people know who we are. If you don't know who we are, you're living under a rock.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's one of my other questions is what's changed in the profession over the last 30 years? So we covered some of that, but what about even just the products and just general New York construction?
Well, it's gotten more complicated, way more complicated. When I started, I'd give you a proposal for 50 yards of carpet, blah, blah, blah. Let's say it was $25,000. You'd sign it. I'd order the materials, get a deposit, and there were maybe 3 pieces of paper exchanged.
Right.
For every job now. I think we counted it recently, and it was like 38 pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So you need a lot more admin.
Yeah.
Because you need the insurance requirements and all that, right?
Yeah.
It's way more complicated. While people are, there are a lot more reps on the street, so that I don't know. I think that's a good thing, but it's all a function of the right information being given to the clients.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. How has COVID affected your business?
Well, we have, like everyone, pivoted so damn fast, right?
Right.
We had to pivot.
Yep.
We had to be like, whoa. In what, 2 weeks, we were all working from home?
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Successfully.
Yeah.
We can do difficult things when forced to, right? We just do it. It's affected our business. We were talking about moving. Now we're thinking about staying in our space because we really don't need double the space.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're doing work remotely. We have it's affected our business. Obviously, sales were affected. There were 3 months where we weren't even on job sites, right? But it's coming back. I'm hopeful. You know, something like Material Bank was very popular during COVID.
Sure.
So architects and designers count on us a lot for sampling. And when COVID was over, I actually reached out to people and said specifically, please call us for samples, because if you keep on going through Material Bank, one day we won't be here.
Right.
Like, you have to, you know how everybody's talking shop local?
Yeah.
You have to support your local vendors, because while Material Bank might solve a problem short term,
yep,
when you need someone to come look at a project, to come do, you're not going to have those people, whether it's flooring or anything.
Yeah, Material Bank basically sends you the sample, kind of anything you want. But again, you're there to coach you through the actual material and what it does and how it's going to perform.
Right. And if it's compatible with all the other finishes you want to use, how you can use it. It's a sampling source, but there's so much more to a successful specification on a project, right?
Yep.
Like the compatibility of products, the transitions, the quality.
Yep.
So that's where we get involved.
So along the same lines of COVID, you know, you're a real New Yorker. You've been here your whole life. And you're an institution in New York for sure. You know, if we were to fast forward a few years and COVID is over, I mean, I would have, you know, if you told me this 6 months ago, I would have told you now, that would have been now. But let's assume in a few years it's over, because I think it's going to linger for a little while. What does New York City recover and go back to the way it was? Sort of that almost Disneyland-like atmosphere, or are we back to sort of the more grunge New York City? And how do you kind of see it playing out?
I have the most faith in New York. There's no doubt. And I could be totally wrong, because we'll know in a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, right? Yeah. But I can't. And I've had this conversation with people, like New York, I believe, could really use an influx of young, creative risk takers.
Yeah.
And what left New York during COVID? Older, established people who were like, I'm not risking anything anymore. I've got to go. Be safe.
Right. I have 2 other houses I'm going to go to.
I've got 2 other houses. I'm taking my kids. I'm enrolling them in that school. And so rents went down for a nanosecond. but I can only imagine that the young people who have been living nearby or in Ohio or whatever said, finally, we can afford to live there. Why don't we go there? And the influx of young blood is critical to New York staying fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go to a restaurant and every entree is $42, I mean, that's not going to attract young, fresh people, because they're creative types and they're So I think it's a good thing, and I think New York will come back.
I love it.
I've been here long enough. I've seen it come back a few times.
Yeah, me too. Yep, exactly.
So, it's like saying, is London going to go?
Right.
Or Barcelona? Like,
yeah, I just get frustrated when I see, on the news that, people kind of write it off. And, the reality of New York and what it is, even right now, yes, it's not as bustling as it was before, but it is nowhere near what they, what it's portrayed on the news. And it always just pisses me off that, it's New York, it's fine, and there's nothing wrong here. So I don't know. It's, we'll see. So tell us a little bit about your other businesses and your hobby. And Claire, with Catskill Provisions, did it all really start with a gift, with a beehive as a gift?
It did.
Okay, so tell us about this.
It did. It started with, of course, we have this house in Long Eddy, New York, which is in the middle of nowhere in New York. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to have something, but like a horse, you can't have a horse and leave it during the week. You can't have animals. We had chickens, but I was looking for something else. And Claire dressed up as a bee and gave me a beehive for Christmas.
Okay.
And we got a nuke of bees, a package, and we read the books and just did it.
Okay.
And but Claire really loved it more than I did. She just, it's total. When you're in a suit and the bees are all around, it is really.
Oh, so it's that level of beekeeping. It's not just like a sleeve of bees.
No. You're just being surrounded by bees. It is like, I sort of equate it to snorkeling, because you're in their world. When you snorkel, isn't it fascinating? You're in their world.
Yeah. You're
in the bees' world when you beekeep, and you can't think of anything else.
Okay.
You were just like overwhelmed by the intensity. And so Claire got into it, and then we started selling honey, because we have to turn everything into a business. So we started selling honey, and now she's selling honey commercially to probably 300 restaurants in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, it went from, let's get a beehive, to
and big time restaurants.
Yeah, really.
Like
and we sell it through our food distributor. Okay. We don't take it ourselves anymore. Claire was delivering 5-gallon buckets to restaurants when we started.
So you were producing that much honey that you decided, hey, let me start a business out of this.
Yep. Okay. And so she's got the wholesale business, and then we have then she decided to mix some honey with whiskey.
Okay.
And she subbed it out for a few years, and then was like, if we're going to grow this, if we're going to do this, we need to build a distillery. And I was like, all right. All right. So we have big lives.
On the property, you built a distillery.
So my father built a barn for me when I bought the property upstate. Okay. He built a barn. He was an accountant, but he was a jack of all trades. And I was like, Papi, I need a barn. What do you think? He was like, what style? Okay. He read about it. He's one of those men who can read something and learn how to do it.
Okay.
And he built a beautiful barn. And that's where the distillery is. And we make award-winning 4 out of our 5 products are award-winning spirits. We have 3 double golds, and which means 50 out of the 50 judges picked our product. And we have 1 bronze at the San Francisco Spirits Competition, which is the Olympics in the spirits world. Okay. And Claire wouldn't submit our products because someone had told her it was the Olympics of the spirits world, and she was hesitant to do so. She submitted the rye, and the first time she submitted it, she won double gold. This year, the bourbon and our pollinator gin won double gold.
Wow. But how do you go from the honey to building a barn to learning about how to have a distillery and then turning it into a business and keeping a flooring business going?
Well, how I do it is I don't do it. Claire does it. Right? I don't want to take credit. I'm part of the business, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And we bounce things off each other. But that's an independent business. She runs that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to take any credit for that. Like, yeah, I have good ideas. There's no doubt about it. But just like she gives me great ideas for the flooring business, sure. Right? We're both, she was the publisher of the second largest magazine in the country. So she has skills
sure.
that are beyond. I mean, she also takes apart the still and puts it back together.
Wow.
I can never do that. You see, that's bad. She took that on. Yeah, I choose not to do that, but holy cannoli, that's a big task.
Yeah.
She did it because she had to. We do tough things. I tell her all the time.
Yeah, but I love your whole product line, the idea that honey is infused in everything from the pancake mix to the truffles to everything, right? Yeah, it's such a and it is, I see it in Whole Foods all the time. I'm always so proud when I see it. Mm-hmm. I have so much of it though. I'm like, I should buy some more.
No, I get pictures of pictures of our products. Oh, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm at the airport. Look, I'm here, and it's so cute.
It's exciting to see it. Yeah, I get. Oh, I was like, look, I know the person who does this stuff.
Yeah, it's really cute. I get photographs from everyone all over the place.
That's great. So between the flooring and everything, what are you most proud of these days?
Most proud of? I'm really proud that we are still here.
Okay.
Post-COVID.
Yep, us too.
that's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
I'm proud that we were able to pivot and learn how to function in the new reality. Mm-hmm. And we're doing it. Yeah. Like, we're doing it. We should be very proud that we didn't just say, that's it, I'm out.
Yep.
Because this is tough. Getting through this is tough. Not knowing what's coming and going forward in spite of it is tough.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. And all my businesses.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I agree. It's, I think as opposed to other, let's call them recessions, right? It was never this total unknown at the other end, right? And you're
Correct.
Right. I think a lot of companies, us, you, and many others, have pivoted to ultimately, I think, are going to be, even stronger and better equipped and do great things as a result of this, right?
Correct.
Whether it was our own doing or we were forced into it, we made those changes that are important. So
it's telemedicine, right?
Yeah.
Now, it just took us 20 years.
I know, just jumped ahead.
And so we could do it.
So if you bringing it all back around, if you had to do it differently as far as your career, what might you have changed?
Oh, that's so hard. That's hard. I don't. I don't know if I would have changed anything because every year I experience, I learn. I'm technically close to retirement, right? And so you're thinking about what should I have done differently. I'm just so excited about what we do.
Yeah.
That I'm not so much a shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm more of a, that didn't work. Let's change that right away. I don't harp on it. We get bad news a lot in what we do, right? We're like, you're wishing you get this project. You're wishing you get this project. You do a lot of work on it and you wrap your head around it and you think you've got a good chance. And then, wah, 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 wah,
last minute.
Right?
Yep.
And so do I think it affects me?
Yeah.
I don't like it. I hate losing, to be perfectly honest. But I don't dwell on it. We move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
We move forward and we try to debrief why we lost it and why we got the bad news.
Yep.
But I'm not much of a shoulda, coulda, woulda, because you got to keep on.
I love it.
Keep on
Yep.
trucking.
I love it. Well, Cathy, thank you so much for being my guest here on the Anti-Architect podcast. Thank you for sharing your whole story.
You. It's very, very kind of you to be interested.
Absolutely. It's very thoughtful.
I'm flattered.
I'm always so impressed by everything you've accomplished. And you've been obviously a resource for us here, but for all of the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, which is awesome. You're a superstar in our industry. So, to see and read more about Cathy and architectural flooring resources, obviously you can check out their website at www.afrny.com. You can look for Cathy on LinkedIn. And then for Catskill Provisions, they have a website where you can read all about their award-winning everything. And Claire as well on there. I was reading a lot of stuff about her. Fascinating, which is catskillprovisions.com. Or you can also look at them on Instagram, which is Catskills Provisions New York, or at Catskills Provisions New York. So,
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.